and welcome to A Good Walk Spoiled Adventures in Golf with your host, Scott Poniewaz, also known as Pony Golf. A Good Walk Spoiled is part of the Millions.co and Golfer Gang networks. Thank you for tuning in. Let's swing into this week's episode.
Hello and welcome to another episode of A Good Walk Spoiled. I'm Scott Poniewaz and I am your host. So glad to have you all here. I'm recording this on a Saturday morning now, just getting ready to head out to the course this afternoon, do a nice little practice session as I'm gearing up for the Montana State Amateur this next week. So that should be an exciting weekend up in Missoula. And after last season's tournament session, really hoping to pick it up a little bit here in 2025. Definitely it was a rough season last year, and so far the start of this season has been a little shaky as well. But hoping that things come around. So anywho, enough about me. So today I had the idea to dig in a little bit more around sustainability in golf course design and some of the new trends that are starting to take off in the golf world as we're coming around. You know, as somebody that lives in a mountain state, I know that there's a lot of controversy around some of the private clubs and especially wilderness and rivers, but it's honestly a situation across not only the U.S., but also globally, especially when you start to look at some of the sustainability around golf courses in desert locations such as Arizona, Las Vegas, California, and some of the water conservation issues that surround courses out there. Without further ado, might as well just jump into today's episode. I hope you find it kind of interesting, especially just given where we are in the world today. So today, a little talk about the future of sustainability in golf course design. Before we jump in, quick word from one of our sponsors here, and we'll pick it up after that. And welcome back again. Scott Poniewaz here, your host of A Good Walk Spoiled Adventures in Golf. And thank you for tuning in. If you're new around here, be sure to check out some of our previous episodes. We had some great ones so far this season with Jay Blasi, golf course architect that just opened up Poppy Ridge, or reopened, I guess you could say. Also the designer of Chambers Bay, host of the 2015 U.S. Open that just celebrated its 10-year anniversary for hosting that tournament, where Jordan Spieth took the win. And then also had Bryson, who is the owner of Parsons Golf, which is sort of like an Airbnb for golf simulators, home golf simulators. So check that one out as well, and don't leave behind any of last season's episodes either. Had a lot of great episodes, close to 20 last season. So be sure to hit that subscribe button, listen to some of those old ones, and of course, if you have any thoughts on future episodes or think you'd make a great guest, love to have you on. Just shoot me a DM at PonyGolf, Pony_golf, just like is right there on my little name there over on Instagram. Shoot me a DM and we can set something up, or I'd love to hear some ideas for future episodes. It's always good to have topics that people are keen on listening to. So with that, sustainability in golf. Thanks for tuning in, and be sure to subscribe to either our YouTube or your favorite podcast audio version, Spotify's, Apple's, radios. We're out there. So today we're going to explore the intersection of golf and sustainability, and specifically golf course architecture and sustainability. So obviously we've had a lot of concerns around environmental and resource limitations, and the way that people are designing and maintaining golf courses is rapidly evolving. And so we'll explore some of the innovative approaches here that are shaping the future of golf and making it a little bit more environmentally friendly without sacrificing the challenge and the beauty of the golf courses themselves, and of course maintaining those pristine turfs and greens. So what exactly do I mean when I say sustainable golf course architecture? It's more than just a buzzword. It's really holistic, and it's a holistic approach that considers the environmental, the social, as well as the economic impacts of a golf course from its design from day one to the long-term operation. And it's about designing courses that will work with the environment rather than working against it. And so when we talk about golf course sustainability, it really includes a couple key elements. And so one of the big ones, especially now that I kind of led this episode with, is minimizing that resource consumption, reducing water usage, energy consumption, and also, most importantly now, especially in a place like Montana with wilderness areas, reducing that reliance on chemical fertilizers and pesticides, which kind of leads into the next one, which is protecting and enhancing biodiversity. So creating those habitats for wildlife and preserving natural ecosystems within the course. Next up is using those environmentally friendly materials. So selecting sustainable construction materials and turfgrass varieties as well that are fit within specific environments. Long-term economic viability. And so this is ensuring that the course is economically sustainable through efficient management and reduced operating costs over time. So ultimately, sustainable golf course architecture aims to create courses that are both enjoyable as well as courses that are responsible stewards for the environment, whether it's a public course, private course, every course sort of has that responsibility more and more now. So as we kind of touch on the resource conservation, one of the interesting areas that I sort of dug into a little more was water management innovations. And so water is obviously a precious resource, and golf courses are often criticized for high water conservation. However, there have been some pretty significant advancements being made in water management. So some of those are things like efficient irrigation systems. So some of these modern irrigation technologies ensure that water is distributed only where needed and reduces the waste and keeping the course healthy. So, some of those things are things like, water sensors. So you're not overwatering areas that potentially are already hydrated enough, but also telling you where potentially water needs to be moved around and watered on specific parts of the course. Another area is in the agronomy world, drought-resistant turf. And so many courses are starting to shift to turf varieties that require less water while also maintaining that durability and playability. And so pretty interesting trends there in the agronomy world, and especially places that do require a lot of water in hot environments, desert environments. Las Vegas is California's, the other areas like Arizona and Utah, where desert environments that don't necessarily get a lot of rainfall or natural precipitation. Water recycling. So many courses are now using treated wastewater for irrigation, reducing that reliance on the freshwater sources. I know especially here in Montana, there's a lot of ponds that are built in mountain environments to basically collect a lot of the snowmelt and, again, protect some of that natural water from needing to be used as fresh water. Stormwater management. So a lot of courses now are also installing better drainage systems as well as these retention ponds to handle heavy rainfall and prevent flooding, but then also using that heavy rainfall and being able to irrigate the course. So these innovations not only are helping to better conserve water on the golf courses, but it's also helping to reduce the costs and, maintain and use new irrigation sources for maintaining just the overall health of the golf course, which is pretty exciting to see. So, moving on to our next section, eco-friendly turf grass and landscaping. So this is a new area as well that's sort of fitting in there. I know we talked about some of the new agronomy that's been happening, or new innovations happening in agronomy with some of those more durable turfs. The types of turf grass and landscaping used on a golf course can have significant impact on the environment. And so native plants are becoming a big one. Native grasses, reshaping fairways and creating more strategic bunkers is enhancing the aesthetic appeal while also reducing a lot of the maintenance costs on golf courses, which is exciting. Reduced turf areas. A lot of the turf requires obviously irrigation, but incorporating things like gravel beds or some of these native plants or grasslands can also help so that you're not having to irrigate as much of the course. And especially if you're off the fairway areas, it helps to reduce some of those costs, but also the water demand that a golf course requires. So more waste areas, using some of those retention ponds for irrigation as well. And then also by using some of those plants and grasses, they're also creating beautiful and challenging playing surfaces while minimizing that environmental footprint, but also things like native grasses or native plants are also helping to keep that local ecosystem in check. So, instead of having non-native species of grasses that are more expensive to maintain or irrigate, you also are keeping some of those native biodiversity with insects and butterflies and some of these other things that you don't necessarily think about that also help the greater health of the golf course. So, yeah, pretty exciting stuff just in some of that eco-friendly grass and landscaping that's being used. All right, so moving on to our next topic, balancing ecology and playability. So one of the biggest challenges in sustainable golf course architecture is balancing those ecological considerations with that playability and sort of the excitement of the course. So golfers are expecting more and more nowadays, I feel like, a certain level of quality as well as challenge. And so it's really important that courses are able to meet those expectations, but still maintain that environmental responsibility for their property, as well as the surrounding areas near the golf course. And so some of the ways that they're doing this a little bit more is strategic bunker placement. And so adjusting those bunker locations ensures strategic play while reducing unnecessary maintenance costs. And so I know that last episode with Jay Blasey, he talked about some of those strategic bunker placements, and adjusting tees to minimize multiple bunkers, but to use those different tee lengths that keep those bunkers in play for different levels of players. So even taking out some of the bunkers that are, maybe bunkers of the yesteryears that are no longer in play with certain distances of players' shots, and otherwise, some of these bunkers too nowadays are being taken away for pace of play or other purposes as well. But a lot of that too comes down to maintenance costs, because filling sand and maintaining just the raking and everything on a daily basis can be higher maintenance costs, and the mowing around bunkers can also be more time consuming. So sort of a follow-on to that one, which we kind of alluded to, but tee box expansion. So adding more teeing options is accommodating a wider range of golfers from beginners to professionals. And so we're seeing this more and more, even with senior tees, as they're, sort of called, or mixed tees. And a lot more courses are, instead of, calling it men's and women's tees, adjusting the tee system based on a 7-iron distance, which helps you figure out like what kind of iron shots you're going to be hitting into a green based on the tee box that you choose. And so, yeah, a lot of those tee box expansions are also helping to maintain that sustainability, where instead of having multiple bunkers that you used to based on specific tee sets, now you're able to accommodate different players based on driving distance and potential challenges within the course. One of the other areas that they are also kind of working on is some of the natural wetlands that are being incorporated into design based on, rather than trying to raise the elevation of a fairway or things like that, but trying to have that area more strategically placed. Even wastelands, just with some of those natural grasses, rather than try to level, bulldoze, and build up a fairway. How do you actually incorporate that into the golf course design? A lot of this stuff also can create habitat for natural wildlife, deer, create thoroughfares and parklands that allow deer or, in the case of Montana, moose or even bear moving through, or elk herds. But there's different ways that, that habitat can be worked in. With some of those areas too, having tree removal. So there's a lot of golf courses that are actually removing some of the trees of yesteryear. I had an interesting talk on this with Jay. So again, go back to that last episode where we talked about tree removal. So many years ago, I'd say 80s, 90s, a lot of the golf courses actually had tree planting initiatives on the golf courses, which later, we're now finding that it not only sort of ruined some of the playability of the golf course, but also made turf maintenance much more challenging. So there was a lot more dead grass under the trees, especially shade. There was a lot of muddy areas. And so then a lot of the golf courses were spending lots of money maintaining the turf in these heavily treed areas. And that led to more irrigation, more fertilizer, all these different things that the reverse of their impact. And so, so tree removal has become a new factor for a lot of golf courses, opening the golf course, allowing natural sunlight to keep turf intact. Also, helps with natural irrigation from rain and other things like that. And so super interesting stuff, and just kind of wrapping up too, like one of the other things that I kind of forgot to mention, but a lot of courses now are also using Bermuda grass, which requires less water and fertilizer that, some of the more traditional golf course grasses like bent grass have been using. So, that's just one of those agronomy shifts that's happened of, moving away from bent grass, moving to Bermuda in an effort to, maintain and conserve water. So a lot of cool things that are happening on the golf courses today. And, so I think we'll see even more of this stuff starting to happen with golf courses that are being newly constructed. Right now, we're sort of in this boom of golf course construction, and especially a lot of it being built in places that are sort of outside of urban areas where they're developing old ranch land or old prairies in places like Nebraska or, the front range of Colorado where, some of this water harvesting and recycling can be built with a lot of these new technologies that, former courses didn't have to deal with. And, even a lot of these older courses are slowly upgrading their irrigation systems. But when you're built in the early 1900s or, the 40s and 50s, before a lot of this technology, unless you're doing a big renovation, a lot of the irrigation systems that were installed back then are aging out and, maybe have just been duct taped together, so to speak. And so now a lot of these new courses can use a lot of those moisture sensors and weather-based controllers to reduce water waste. And, especially if they've got oncoming rainstorms or things like that, that they can maybe hold off on irrigation earlier in the week if they know that later in the week they've got a big weather pattern coming through. So yeah, I think what we're seeing with a lot of these new construction is going to be super exciting. And, I really think that, and sort of wrapping things up with today's episode, sustainable golf course architecture is not just going to be this, trend. I think it's really going to be future of the sport. And we're seeing more and more golf course architects moving less dirt and instead utilizing the natural shape of the land that they're building the courses on. And I think by embracing not only this natural form of the golf course in their new designs and architecture, you're going to also see a lot of these new innovative technologies that are being developed that further enhance the responsible practices, not only for the cost-cutting sake of things, but also for the responsibility and sustainability so that golf can sort of remain a sustainable force and hopefully fit in within the ecosystems that they're built in and continue to use these eco-friendly materials. And I think the agronomy world is really taking off. So I think we're going to also see some innovations just in the turf that courses are using as they're developing new courses. So thanks for joining me today. I think kind of a fun episode, different take on things for the world of golf. And next time you're out on the course, I mean, just take a look around and take in your surroundings a little bit more. And I think you'll start to notice some different things that are happening with golf courses, or, you know, if you've been at a particular course over an extended period of time over the last, just take a look around on your next walk of 18 and pay attention to some of the changes that have been happening at your local courses. And I think you'll start to notice some things and maybe why they're making those adjustments. Or even, next time the superintendent at your local club or course maybe has an informational meeting or a proposal about changes with the membership or the local course, pay attention and ask the questions on why. Or maybe they're just going to volunteer that information altogether, because I think more and more superintendents, more designers, and golf architects are really making sustainable golf course design and maintenance a big thing going forward. So ask your superintendent next time you're out there, and I think you'll get some interesting takes. But thanks for joining me today. That wraps up today's episode of A Good Walk Spoiled here on the Golfer Gang Network and Podcast Network. So not only me, but head over to Golfer Gang, their website, which I'll drop a link in the description here, and go check out some of the other podcasts in there. And again, that's golfergang.com. Also, give me a follow and subscribe to this podcast. Hit that subscribe button, and also leave me a review. Leave it a like on YouTube. Find me on all the things so that hopefully my subscriber base will continue to grow. Share me with a friend, and keep listening and stay tuned for next week's episode. Thanks so much, and have a great day. That concludes today's episode of A Good Walk Spoiled, Adventures in Golf, hosted by Scott Poniewaz. That's myself. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to like, subscribe, rate it high, and follow us on Instagram at pony_golf to stay in the loop. We'll catch you next time.